There I am. I'm too small. There you go. So let's take a look at Gundam Assemble, the newly announced Gundam game, tabletop miniature game from Bandai. And there's been a lot of chatter. There's been a lot of discussion about this. Uh, as far as like the hobby goes, when you talk about model building, um, especially for science fiction stuff, there's Gundam, uh, and it's a huge, long-lasting IP about war and shooting and violence with big space robots and stuff. Um, and then you have Games Workshop with 40K and Warhammer 40K and all that stuff, which is about war and science fiction and big guns and shooting people. Um, uh, the difference being that with Gundam, it's these models are posable. You don't really have to paint them. And as I said, they're posable. They're often much larger than miniatures, Games Workshop stuff. And then on the Games Workshop side, the detail is very nice. They are not posable. They're intended to be painted, and they belong to a game system. So the motivating factor for a lot of people when it comes to Gunpla is that it's just simply the joy of building a model, something related to the IP of Gundam, whatever show that might be, and improving your skills within the hobby. The part of the motivating factor for Games Workshop and Warhammer 40K, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Kill Team, is that you are immersing yourself into a fiction, whether it be 40K and stuff like that. But you're also buying into a game. Not everyone plays the game, but a number of people do sort of get into the gameplay and collect and buy for the game. And so with this recent news over the weekend that Bandai are releasing Gundam Assemble, which is going to be a tabletop miniature-based game using Gundam models, that has caused quite an interesting conversation amongst the hobbyists on both sides, whether it be Warhammer folks or Gundam folks, because it's an interesting gateway that works both ways. If you're someone that's into Gunpla, that never really dabbled in the world of the miniature hobby, and I'm not even strictly talking about Games Workshop. There's a number of other miniature-based tabletop games out there, like Kings of War and Infinity. This is a nice kind of way to maybe see what that world is like, the miniature hobby world. And if you're someone that comes from the miniature hobby, again, whether it be 40K or Age of Sigmar or Infinity, this might be a really interesting way to get into the Gunpla side and see what that is like. So let's take a look at some of the material here, and maybe we'll put the volume down a little bit, because there are some videos that we can watch. A new tabletop game project using Gunpla is here. Gather various mobile suits from different Gundam series to face off in an epic showdown. So it's, if you imagine something kind of like Smash Brothers, where they're kind of like putting together all the different IP, not just simply a single fictional setting like the Universal Century. It's going to be like a mixed bag of everything. About Gundam Assemble is a tabletop game that uses approximately 2-inch size gunpla to battle. Two battles. Bad grammar. Each unit has abilities that reflect their unique characteristics, allowing players to enjoy scenarios that follow the original story or diverge into situations that transcend the world of Mobile Suit Gundam series, thus providing both a sense of recreation and distinct battles. Detailed rules and product specifications will be announced later. I'm losing my voice talking like this. So here's an example of the runner. And this is very different than something like the Gundam artifact models, which I imagine are kind of similar in scale. I have a few Gundam artifact models. Those have multiple runners, and I would liken the building experience to something like an EG or an HG, just much, much smaller. There's individual legs that you have to put together. There's individual feet. The head is separate, and there could be separate component parts to create the head. Now, when you're looking at this runner here for Gundam Assemble, the RX-78 is all kind of contained within simply just this one runner. And so you see that the legs are actually, one leg is attached to the torso, and even the arm holding the gun is attached there. That's interesting to me because it suggests that you are not going to be able to customize an individual unit. So, for example, the loadout, so to speak, for this particular RX-78, maybe this loadout is simply the shield and the weapon there, the gun. And maybe there's going to be another loadout for the RX-78 with the, what do they call it? The hyper hammer or something like that, you know, like a more melee based build. And again, when you think about something like Warhammer, at least back in my day with Warhammer, you could customize your models to an certain extent to reflect the hyper bazooka and the Gundam hammer. Thank you, Futaba. You could customize your models to a certain extent and give them different loadouts, give them different weapons. So that gives me, that's my first little kind of thought, is as far as customizing on a per unit basis, I think that like this is kind of set in stone. And here we have an image of some of the other models that you're going to be that they have available: Wing Gundam, RX-78, Sharzaku, Ariel, Unicorn, a Kapool, a large ass ship, some kind of other Gundam. I'm sure all of you in the chat can fill me on what exactly these things are, but it is cool that what you're seeing here is the bases reflect to some degree the size of the model. When you look at the Unicorn here, it's two tiles. It has two hexes, and then the large ship here is 3. And another thing to point out too is that the scale is likely kind of inconsistent within itself. Again, the ship should be absolutely massive, right, relative to everything else that you're seeing here. So there's no sense of scale, or rather, there's no consistency in the scale, which is fine when you're talking about like when you're talking about a more board game-like experience. I think that's fine. In the world of miniature-based games like Warhammer, like 40K, blah blah blah, scale is much more closely observed, and so a large monster will tower over troops, and then large tanks and stuff like that, dragons. All of that is consistent within the line. And when you look at what I'm seeing here is something that feels a bit more like a board game, and we'll kind of get into that too. Here is the video, so we might as well watch that. Let's mute this and watch the video. Whoa, is that too loud, guys? Coming soon. All right, so let's examine this video a little more closely. So in these shots, what you're seeing here is the models in a kind of modular terrain, and there are some other pictures of that because they were available. They did have the Gundam Assemble available to look at an event in Florida, which is something that we're going to discuss a little later. The modular terrain setup, again, very familiar for people who are into 40K and stuff. I believe to be simply just for show, because they do show later the... And there it is being painted. Yeah, the grid, which I think the game is going to be played on a grid. I thought there was a shot... Okay, so there's a D8 getting rolled. This... Okay, so getting really into... Probably looking really too hard into this, guys. But a D8 is rolled. That's an 8-sided dice is rolled. And then they proceed to move the model on this hex. And I really hope... I really hope that movement is not based on rolling a dice. Do you know what I mean? Like that is some old school Hero Quest type beat stuff. Like in Hero Quest, which people hated, you would roll a dice and that would determine how far you move, and I really hope that that's not the case. Isn't it a D10? Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you're right. It's a D10. My apologies. I think you're right. So there's the grid. There's the hex. It's moving. And so another interesting thing, in some of the other shots that I had seen, that I had seen pictures from Florida, they had a very similar table set up, but then they had D6s. So maybe you're going to use D6s and D10s and whatever, maybe even D12s. That to me seems a little overly complicated. Like if you're introducing all these different dice, different sided dice to your game, I would imagine that if this game is supposed to kind of capture the interest of casuals and stuff, you might want to limit that to like a single dice type. Coming soon. Yeah, so that's all we know. That's pretty much the one video. What is Gundam? And there is actually some more information elsewhere, but that's I think that might be the extent of it. Yeah, I'm interested. I'll say that I'm interested, and I'm definitely going to pick up some of these and probably give it a shot, give it a spin, and I'm looking forward to painting them. I think so. Bandai have been making a lot of inroads in the world of like tradable TCGs. They have several TCGs, including One Piece, Dragon Ball, Digimon, and they also have the upcoming Gundam game, the Gundam TCG coming out, and now we have this new miniature-based game coming out. I will say that creating a miniature-based game, even the studios, the developers that are at the top of this category, this genre, if you're talking about Games Workshop, there's a lot of people that complain about the rule sets in Games Workshop games, and they're supposed to be the best at it. So my point being that Bandai, and we don't know about like specifically the designers and the developers behind this, if they're the same people that work on the TCG, they might have some growing pains. They might have a lot of learning to do when it comes to making a competent tabletop miniature game. And of course, because we've been looking at grids and the hexes and everything, that again suggests to me that it's a hex-based combat game, more in the style of Mech Warrior. I'm not too familiar with Mech Warrior, but it seems like it's going to kind of be more along that kind of gameplay style. But again, there's a lot more information that we need to learn about it, and we don't have much to go on. So hopefully in the weeks to come, the days and the weeks to come, we'll learn more about it. But I'm really interested, and at the very least, if the even if the game is like okay, maybe the game, because okay, listen, I've been seeing people talk on Twitter and stuff about, oh, Games Workshop is so screwed over, like Bandai's gonna kick their ass. Listen, let's let it come out first, let people play it, and then we'll talk. um at the very least, we'll have some cool miniatures, and the game could be fine, the game could be whatever. But as I said, even when it comes to Games Workshop themselves, they have a lot of issues when it comes to coming up with rules, coming up with balanced gameplay, coming up with competitive gameplay. Uh, but again, and I know that some have mentioned it before, the um, the price point is going to be a huge deciding factor, and of course, the price point for Gunpla has been very fair and very consistent over the last, I don't know, several decades, really. The price has been fairly steady, and recently we got some news about a price increase in some with Gunpla, but that has been a big issue in the world of Games Workshop, in the world of Warhammer, is the price. You you can basically get into Warhammer or buy a new PC. You could like get into Warhammer and get a 2,000 point army, or like buy a house. Those are like the options available to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if the game is at a really fair price point, I think that that's going to be a great way to get people into both sides of the coin. Do you know what I mean? As I said, there's going to be people that are going to get into the miniature hobby for the first time because of this, and then there's going to be miniature based gamers that are going to get into Gunpla for the first time. And I think that in that sense, everyone wins, and Bandai wins. Bandai wins in either ways. But yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more about this, so stay tuned for more news. They say to use with card game for the hollow effect like it's Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah, but I mean, that honestly, that's I did see that there was some kind of promotion where you can get like a figure and a card. To me, that's like a marketing gimmick. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really, they just want to like synergistically combine these things so that people buy everything, but I don't think that people are really going to do that in the long run. Sounds good. Gave him a little walk. 100% Bandai is out to eat Battletech's lunch. I feel like there's enough. There's enough room for both to coexist, because in all honesty, I think that Battletech is going to be a much more, or rather, Battletech is a much more crunchier game. It has a lot more depth. It's been around for so long, and the audience is there for it. And I think that ultimately this game is going to be pretty casual. That's my guess, is that it's going to be fairly casual. Dude, if there was like a political phase to the game, Oni, how's it going, Oni? By the way, I know I'm catching your comment late. Let me shout Oni out. Modifier Thaco. Let's go for Thaco. You guys know about Thaco? You gotta paint them. Yes. Oh no. Yeah. I mean, again, it seems like a play that was designed to appeal to the miniature-based crowd, which has no qualms about painting miniatures. Although I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if in the future they do release models that are color separated in the way that Gundams are, because that's like a market that is, or that's something that I think Bandai is uniquely qualified to do in the miniature hobby space. There's HeroClix by WizKids, and they do pre-painted models, but they look butt ugly. Like, pre-painted models, they're just devastatingly atrocious, the paint jobs. But if Bandai ultimately put out like properly, or rather normal color separated kits, and I think they could. I would say that the game would have to be successful in order for them to pull that, to want to even bother to do that.